Raceway. And the venue, of course, for today's Shell Ultra National Touring Car Championship Grand Final. The cars are on the circuit on the first of 2 warm-up laps. And what a stellar field we have for today's Grand Final. 17 cars under the existing track record. An absolute turnaway crowd here at Oran Park this afternoon. And of course the pictures coming to you in Australia, New Zealand and throughout Europe, courtesy of the Australian Television Network. Popular, listen to the crowd. Dick Johnson comes through Castrol Corner, back onto the start finishing line. They'll be taking their full 2-lap warm-up immediately after the driver introductions to the crowd. And they, of course, also have a lot of activity on the starting grid. As we've mentioned to you in our previous item, the Park Royal Pole Sitters Award has gone to Jimmy Richards for the JPS BMW team. It will be an all-black front row with teammate Tony Longhurst sharing the front line. I noticed there Dick Johnson beckoning his mechanics over to the car, waving them over, and the hood was lifted for a couple of seconds. Second row of the grid, Glenn Seaton, the series leader. 3 points clear of Jim Richards going into today's race. And sharing the second row with him, Larry Perkins. But for BMW, things couldn't look rosier. Correct, Gary Wilkinson?
Yeah, Michael, and as we said, Jim Richards on pole position. But the interesting thing is, what is the role of the teammate here today? Let's see if we can find that out from Tony Longhurst. Jim's got pole. Jim's the man that's challenging Glenn Seaton for the championship. Where do you fit in here today?
I'd like to just run second to Jim without being involved in anything, but I won't block Glenn deliberately, but if he goes to pass me, I'll just make a race out of it.
Should be one hell of a race, man.
It should be. The first couple of laps with Dick and Grice, you just don't know what's going to happen. What can you say? We came from 9th and 11th at the last meeting, and the Nissans were on the front row. We thought it would be hard to catch them. And
have a good race. Okay, Tony Longhurst, and he does have a tough assignment. We've spoken to Jim Richards, we've spoken to Glenn Seaton. I don't know whether we can work our way across to George Fury. Let's try and do that. Oh, where's the man? Oh, he's back up. We're all the way back here. We've got plenty of time to do that, haven't we? Let's go back to George Fury. He's been a little bit shut out of the championship so far this year because of the great success of Glenn Seaton. We're going to try and muscle in just before they head off on the warm-up laps. Of course, George was one of the top contenders for the Touring Car Championship last year, and we remember well his feats here in the final round with Robbie Francevic last year. A little bit different situation. You've had some of the limelight stolen from you by Glenn Seaton. How do you see your role in the championship decided today, George?
Well, just as a support to Glenn, I mean, I'm a bit sort of, I feel a bit out of place really, that I can't really fight my own fight. But I wish all the best for Glenn, and I wish for the team that we can pull it off, even if I can't.
There's a lot of experience on Jimmy Richards' side.
Well, sure, but I mean, Glenn's a young charger. I've been quite amazed that he hasn't been really nervous, and I think he'll give a good fight, and that's all any of us can do.
Okay, good luck this afternoon. George Fury, a man with a wealth of experience, of course, in touring car racing here in Australia, and a man who is going to be tough to beat here this afternoon.
Well, I think you said it, Gary Wilkinson. There's the scene. Gary's on the grid. Won't be terribly long before they take off on their warm-up laps. They have 2 scheduled. And, of course, this afternoon's Shell Ultra National Grand Final will be contested over 50 laps. I've already detailed that Commodores haven't seen victory lane so far in 1987 in the Touring Car Series. Gary's with a man who could change that.
Yes, Mike, Larry Perkins heads the Commodore Brigade. Hasn't been the best of years for Commodore Larry, but this is the big finale. I know the other two have got the championship between them, but you could act as a bit of a spoiler here this afternoon?
I certainly hope so. I don't aim to give it all to them without trying, that's for sure. And you know, we're in a pretty good spot, and our Dunlops are going to last the distance here, no problem. I think we can give them a run for their money.
Commodores, of course, are disadvantaged on many of the circuits. Larry, what about Oran Park?
Well, it's not our extreme worst, that's for sure, but the Commodore's been designed for Bathurst and long legs, and you know, we can't deny the fact here they're very short turns, but we've got it set up pretty well, and I think we can still, you know, I'd reckon they'd be worried about us.
Had a good race, pal. Larry Perkins leading the Commodore Brigade, but of course the big interest is in Jim Richards and Glenn Seaton. They're the two vying for the championship. The cars are about to head off on the warm-up lap. We'll be back for the final round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship after this break. Go. The scene is Sydney's Oran Park Raceway, and the occasion is the grand final of the 1987 Shell Ultra Touring Car Nationals. Let's take a look how the field will in fact line up this afternoon. The top dozen. Jim Richards has pole for JPS BMW with a 1:13.40. Second is teammate Tony Longhurst in the second of the M3s with a 1:13.60. From position 3 is the series leader, car 15, Glenn Seaton for the Peter Jackson Nissan team at identical time. From position number 4 is car number 11, Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore. From 5 is car 30, the farmer, George Fury in the Nissan Skyline. Out of position number 6, Queensland's own Dickie Johnson in the Shell Ford Sierra, 1:13.80. From 7, 25 is Graham Bowkett from New Zealand in the Nissan Skyline. Out of position 8, car number 2, Alan Grice in the Bob Jane T-Marts Commodore. From position 9 is car number 60, John Bow, having his first run in the Nissan Skyline. From 10 is 05, Peter Perfect, Peter Brock in Victoria. Out of 11, 75, Colin Bond in the Caltex Alfa Romeo 75 Turbo. Rounding off the 12, 35, Andrew Madecki in the Oxo Supercube Ford Sierra. Tony Longhurst, who shares the front row this afternoon with teammate Jim Richards. As Tony said, he wasn't deliberately going to run into Glenn Seaton or balk him. A couple of drivers, in fact, have said, how are we going to tell the difference? There's 3 of these damn Skylines in the race. So what they've done is, I haven't actually seen it myself, but it put Seaton's name on the rear or on the windscreen at the back of the car so that other drivers know which one is Seaton.
Well, a kid that's under a lot of pressure this afternoon, Glenn Seaton, series leader by 3. As we understand, not terribly nervous going into the race, but what pressure, though, he must really be under. Jimmy Richards, who's been around so long and of course won the Touring Car Nationals in 1985 for his sponsors JPS BMW and of course Castrol. and he's back stronger than ever.
Look at him scrambling off the grid. There's less than a minute to go now. Look at the crowd in the background there for the final round of the Shell Ultra Championship here at Oran Park. 50 laps, 2.62 kilometres the circuit. Seaton versus Richards for the championship, but the race could go to anybody. The top 17 qualifiers all under the lap record.
Balloons now start to lift towards the skies as we're only seconds away from the start. Keep an eye on Alan Grice, who starts on the third row on the outside. There's the scene. 10 seconds away from the start of the 1987 Shell Ultra National Touring Car Championship Grand Final. Racing. Jimmy Richards gets off well, but going even better is Larry Perkins. Glenn Seaton, a beauty, and Farmer George is out and running strong as they head down the front straight. It's the charge of the Light Brigade coming down to the left-hander for the first time, all the way to a safe start and a bad start by one of the BMWs. But just look at this as they float into turn number 1. It's George Fury taking over the race lead with Glenn Seaton in behind. And around goes Greg Hansford. He gets a hit from Peter McLeod as they go through. George Fury, Glenn Seaton. It won't be too long before George looks in the mirror, waves Seaton by. Jimmy Richards well poised, and Larry Perkins making a bold move up on the inside, followed by Johnson. Longhurst is the next one, then Alan Grice. Graham Bowkett is out wide, and then coming up is John Bower, who's already got some of the coach work. He's received a shunt already.
It's been a big one too. The back of the car severely stoved in. Fury, Seaton, Perkins battling with Johnson. Johnson through on the inside. Richards being shuffled back just ahead of Longhurst. Andrew Maniki with a little bit of panel damage, and a lot of panel damage on the left-hand side of the car, number 35.
Heading up to Honda Corner for the first time, and here they come. Listen to the crowd cheering as it's Farmer George hoeing into them. Right behind him, Glenn Seaton in car number 15. Then further back to Tricky Dicky Johnson of Queensland. Across the start-finishing line, 1 down, and of course 49 to go.
Remember, the track is absolutely covered in dust particles and bits of fiberglass, lots of rubber. That's making the job doubly difficult for these guys at the moment.
And there are some very threatening black clouds looming overhead here at Oran Park. There have been 1 or 2 spots of rain, nothing to worry. Look at it. If that cuts loose, this could turn into an unbelievable race here this afternoon. It will be that anyway, don't you worry. Don't you worry about that.
They coast underneath the Yokohama Bridge. Johnson sitting back behind them, running in third. Fourth, of course, is Larry Perkins in the NZ Fluid Connectors Commodore. Then Jimmy Richards and Tony Longhurst. And John Bower coming up through the pack very quickly indeed as the 2 Nissan Skylines running for Peter Jackson Racing. Scorch off the Yokohama Bridge. And as we take race cam, of course, in Alan Grice's car, he's already working away. Coming down on the inside, there goes Tony Longhurst. He drops back 1 as Gricey makes his move.
Oh, gee, that was tremendous. You see the power of the Commodore there as he slipped underneath Longhurst through the corner. Longhurst now tagging onto his tail, but my goodness me. This is a frantic pace that Richards is setting up front, and he's giving the tow along, of course, to his partner, Glenn Seaton.
Kevin Bartlett, meanwhile, is already in the pits. And here's the scrap as they go across the strike for the completion of the 2nd lap. Jimmy Richards sits in behind Larry Perkins, and Grice starting to make overtures as he comes through the field. Peter Jackson Nissan team 1-2 at this stage. There's Dickie Johnson running in 3rd spot. Perkins is 4th. Richards is 5th. Alan Grice is in 6th spot as they go beneath the bridge down to the right-hander.
Peter Brock is also moving up quite rapidly. He's in behind Alan Grice now. Then it's John Bower.
And Jim Richards slips back on the inside of Larry Perkins. That takes him back to 4th spot. And he sits in behind Jimmy Richards. And if he was looking for outside assistance from Tony Longhurst, well, of course, Tony is a little off the pace. He's been passed by Grice. So the game plan of both teams, I think, went a little astray in the first corner. And if anything, it's come up trumps in favour of the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline squad.
Not only passed by Grice, he's been shuffled back by about another 3 cars since then. So something amiss with Longhurst's car. Look at this, Jay, all over the road.
Keep an eye on Alan Grice. He says he's perfectly set up for this race. On these Yokohama radials. Was probably one of the quickest cars in full race trim here on Friday. He's been able to pass Larry Perkins and is now making a line on Jim Richards.
Gricey's running the one and only set of Yokohama radial tyres on this car number 2 today, and Larry opted for the Old Faithful, the Pirelli, or should I say the Dunlop DO5 compound. And Peter Brock is the one in the Commodore at the moment who's looking perhaps the best of the three. Moving up on the other two. John Bowe behind him.
From 10th position on the grid, that's a very big effort by Brock in the opening 3-4 laps of this race.
Commodores, of course, leave a little tail slide there out towards the concrete wall as they make their approach shot to the bridge.
I think that may have been Steve Reed's Lansvale Smash Repairs Commodore up on the outside of the approach to the bridge as well.
So Gricey in the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore goes through. Larry Perkins, the next one, back behind Grice, and of course Peter Brock. So the Commodores at this stage running pretty close together. John Bowe having his first outing for the Peter Jackson Nissan team in the number 60 car. Little extraneous coach work hanging off there, including the bumper. They're not getting away from John Bowe.
Somebody's hooked right into him going down to the first turn. Now look at Peter Brock up onto the back of former team manager Larry Perkins. The gap between race leader George Fury as Kevin Bartlett comes back out of the pits, rejoins the race, and third place Dick Johnson, 4.4 seconds. Alf Grant's Commodore Dulux entry off to the side of the road as well, probably involved in that Greg Hansford skirmish on lap 1.
Been a tough day for Greg. I saw him earlier being treated by the doctor. He got something in his eye earlier and is having great difficulty seeing, and had to have some treatment before he could actually go out on the racetrack.
They gave him some treatment when he got out there, though.
Yeah.
Peter Brock goes through. And of course we take pictures, race cam from Glenn Seaton's car as he follows team leader George Fury down into the left-hander at Castrol. Sweeping through here, I thought maybe Fury by now would have waved him through. But of course both running to team orders this afternoon. Jim Richards having his hands full at this stage, containing the rest of the drivers. And Dickie Johnson still running in third spot at the moment.
Seaton under no pressure in second place, though. I guess he and Fury are content to run 1-2 like this until such times as things change. There's no prospect of that in the immediate term. Back with Sevens race cam in the cockpit of the Nissan Skyline, driven by the championship leader, Glenn Seaton, 22 years of age. Leads the series by 3 points from the veteran Jim Richards.
They've completed 6 of 50 laps for the grand final of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Race leader, the Tal Malmo farmer, Georgie Fury from New South Wales. Second spot, teammate Glenn Seaton, the number 15 Nissan. And third is Queensland's Dick Johnson.
Back in the pack, Commodores having their own scrap, of course. But they'll need to get themselves sorted out if they're going to make up the ground now on these leading pair. It's started to settle down a bit now with 6-7 laps gone, but it was so hectic in the early part of the race. The build-up, of course, here at Oran Park had been absolutely tremendous. The tension was a tangible thing as they went through the first corner. And look at the Shell Ultra replay and keep your eyes on the Ford Sierra Turbo of Greg Hansford. Round and round and round he goes. Copped the short back and sides from a couple of them,
including Peter McLeod. Look at his front left wheel.
And John Bowe in the third of the Nissans also copped it in that melee there, and is running around still with the back of his car stove in.
Georgie Fury continues to lead. Glenn Seaton tags team leader, the man who last year came so close to winning the Australian Touring Car title. The championship, of course, last year went to Robbie Francevic. Here's the placings at the moment. George Fury is your race leader. Glenn Seaton runs in second. Dickie Johnson is third. Fourth, Jimmy Richards. Fifth, Alan Grice. And rounding out the top 6, Lightning Larry Perkins. We'll be back in just a moment.
And this is the action in the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship decider. 9 laps gone, and as we predicted, George Fury has moved over and let teammate Glenn Seaton go to the... Oh, hello. Car number 6 is John Crook in the second of the Mobile Dealer Team Commodores.
Well, they thought they had some problems with Gary Scott with a couple of bangs, but I'll tell you what, John Crook has had 2 whopper stoppers here in the last 24 hours, one in practice yesterday and another one obviously today. The only thing was yesterday he got the back part of the car and he's got the same side but the front this afternoon.
That's Crook.
Yes. Okay, let's recap for you what has happened. Glenn Seaton being waved by George Fury through to take over the lead, and of course the man who will stalk George Fury and Glenn Seaton, Jim Richards, making a great run. Has been able to get through on the inside of Dick Johnson, now moves to 3rd. Johnson is 4th. Alan Grice is now 5th. And that's where we really have a race developing between Dick Johnson and Grice. But Richards starting to pull away from Johnson now. And we'll keep an eye on the times to see whether in fact he's beginning to haul in George Fury.
We saw in the previous round at Amaru Park, the BMWs were able to come from back on the grid.
Here's a replay with John Crook in car number 6.
Ooh, that was Dick Johnson by the look of it involved.
No, it's Greg Hansford in 18 by the look of it. So that hasn't been the luckiest turn for Greg Hansford. And as we pan through the turn, you'll see that Greg has managed to stop his front end on the side of the Mobile Commodore.
Well, he's got no back on that car and now no front.
Hansford predictably has limped to the pits, but Dick Johnson, team leader, is out there circulating and doing it in style, pursued by Alan Grice at this stage. Jim Richards up ahead of them in 3rd spot behind the 2 Nissans. So we've got one hell of a race developing here.
John Bow to the pits, car number 60, so his rear end problems with the Nissan Skyline seemingly terminal. You asked before, Gary, about the potential gap between Seaton and Richards and whether or not it was opening or closing. It's stretching at the moment. It was 4.8, it's now 5.6 seconds. So Glenn seems to have Jim's measure early in the race, but there's a long way to go. There's Bow. Looks pretty second hand.
Not too much damage really, if they can just pry that loose, which they've done in short order. And they'll have him out there and up and running again pretty quickly, I would say.
He may have even come in involuntarily. He might have got a black flag because of the amount of debris on the back of the car.
I think in the bottom up, I think they're going to call it quits. So, bad luck for John Bow in his first outing for Nissan. Of course, he'll be running the remainder of the season with them through the long-distance races, Bathurst. But back to the action. And Alan Grice pursues Dick Johnson relentlessly. Larry Perkins in behind them, coming down to the bottom of the main straight once more.
Well, the first chink in the armour, I suspect, for Nissan team in this afternoon's grand final. Then again, things haven't been going too well for the BMW squad because Tony Longhurst started on the front row. And by our calculations, he's running now in 11th spot.
It hasn't been sighted since the first lap.
So Grice sits on the tail of Dick Johnson. Larry Perkins follows. Order still, Glenn Seaton, George Fury and Jim Richards.
Sevens race cam across the back of the course here at Oran Park.
That gap from Seaton to Richards now 6.02. Glenn's last lap time, a 1 minute 15.89. Grice, is that just a wisp of smoke coming out left-hand rear side? Might have even been a little bit of tyre smoke with the guard rubbing as they come off that very fast part of the course, but he's not too far behind Dick at the moment.
That was fairly obvious the last lap around, almost the same spot.
Dick having a little security tap on the brakes that time as he went down towards that left-hand kink in the main straight. Surprisingly, Grice making a bit of ground here. You wouldn't think that the car that's considerably heavier than the Sierra would do that on that part of the road.
So the race within the race continues. Series leader Glenn Seaton at the front of the pack. teammate George running rear gunner for him. Jim Richards alone in third and with no backup. And there's the smoke again pouring off the rear of Alan Grice's Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore.
It looks a bit excessive, doesn't it?
It does.
There doesn't appear to be any panel damage that we can spot from here. Anyway, doesn't seem to be affecting lap times, and Grice is giving it a good bootful at the moment.
He's saving on tyre wear through that corner. The race settles down. Johnson and Grice continue their scrap for 4th and 5th. Back behind them, Larry Perkins in 6th place. And of course then, Andrew Madecki. Let's recap the placings for you. Seaton is the race leader. Fury is 2nd. Gentleman John is 3rd. 4th, Dick Johnson. 5th, Alan Grice. And rounding out the 6th, Larry Perkins.
The championship decider, the Shell Ultra Touring Car title, being decided here at Oran Park in Sydney this afternoon. 16 laps gone out of 50 for the title, and the leader on screen, car number 15, the Turbo Nissan, is Glenn Seaton, the series leader going into today's race by 3 points over BMW's Jim Richards. The gap between the two on the track is 5.35 seconds. There's Fred Gibson, team manager, smiling already.
Well, the smiles certainly have been breaking out in the Peter Jackson Nissan team, but we'd like you to remember that Jim Richards, who only 3 or 4 laps ago was 6 and a little bit seconds clear, behind George Fury and of course Glenn Seaton, has just pulled that back to about 5.6 seconds. So Jimmy Richards is certainly gaining, slowly but gaining, and there's a lot of laps left in this afternoon's grand final.
Seaton has gone out to a 1 minute 16.02 lap, but that reducing gap between Seaton and Jimmy Richards may have been created by some lap traffic.
George Fury still sitting in there, flying rear gunner for Seaton.
Well, there's the visual gap.
It is closer, isn't it?
It is definitely closer.
Dick Johnson and in behind Dick Johnson. In 4th spot, we've got Grice and Perkins having a little ding-dong of their own.
So that continues nicely. If Jimmy Richards can come from behind, past Glenn Seaton, and win this afternoon, he will take the title. At the moment, though, the Nissan team have things fairly well covered, because I would imagine that George Fury will give Jim Richards a heck of a race. Dick Johnson, car number 17, heading up to the dogleg. Johnson, of course, 42 years of age, comes from Brisbane. First in the 81, 82 and 84 touring car titles, second in 85, sixth in 86, winner of the Hardy back in 1981. Stats courtesy Nissan know-how. Queensland's top banana still continues. Problems with turbos throughout the season, but of course has come up with a round win at Adelaide International Raceway. Right behind him is Gricey and Larry Perkins. I tell you, there's not a Commodore that's not arriving at the end of the front straight with smoke just absolutely screaming off the front tyres.
Gricey, Australia's newest M3 driver, announced recently that he'll be running at Spa with the Schnitzer factory team, driving the 3rd car with Roland Ratzenberger and Marcus Ostreich.
I saw a long-time Commodore. Oh, look at the smoke from that car of Grice's now. The left rear. Definitely something rubbing there. Every time the body drops on the suspension over that rougher part of the course at the back, the smoke flies there. I saw a long-time Commodore peddler Graham Moore a little earlier here today at the track. Goodness me, how does he stay upright?
He loves it, just loves it.
And Graham, of course, we haven't seen him on the track too much in the last 12 months, but he's off to Spa as well. He's got a drive in a French Commodore. Australian Commodore now being developed and raced in France with Michel Delcourt.
There'll be a strong Commodore presence there. Grice has elected to go with one of the best factory rides, completing a tremendous season that he's certainly enjoying and showing his versatility, driving not only the touring cars, but of course he's been over to NASCAR land and be back doing more of that later in the season, and already has plans to run the Commodore, which he believes will be just as competitive as last year at the time that the James Hardy World Touring Car Championship rolls around on October 4. Alan Grice with that ominous blue telltale smoke coming from the rear of the car, and he's carrying our race cam. Might see if we can catch a talk with Gricey during the course of this afternoon's event, now that he has a little of the pressure off him. And yes, and we take pictures from Alan Grice and say good afternoon to you, Alan.
Hey, Mike.
Well, hell of a race so far. You noticed some smoke pouring out the back of your car.
Can't hear you very well, mate. I've got a lot of engine noise coming through my earplugs today, but you can see I've got my customary problem. If you have a look at my water temperature gauge, I'm running between about 118 to 110. The Dick's tyres are going away, and I just don't know what to do with him, because I'm trying to keep out of his airstream as much as possible. You can see his tyres are going, because I don't want to overheat my engine too much. It's touch and go as it is.
I can see that. Well, while you're doing that, Peter Brock is already into the pits, so that's the first of the Commodores. Obviously in, saw the red light flashing there as well. I wouldn't have expected Johnson's tyres to have gone off so early in this race.
Still can't make out very much, mate.
Alrighty, we'll let you get back to the job of...
I'm quite happy to talk to you, just I can't hear.
So succinctly put. Actually, that corner is getting wider and wider each lap.
Yeah, his tyres are going. Mine is still pretty good, but I've got to get out here in the clear air. It's the only way I'm going to keep the engine alive.
I'll let you get back and we'll come back to you later. Alan Grice, of course, carrying race cam. Seeing that we had some problems understanding each other, it didn't seem timely to go into great detail about the smoke that's pouring also out the back of his car. But he's making life difficult for Dick Johnson. coming down to the right-hander.
Yeah, he needs, because of that overheating problem too, needs to get by or pull out if he can and get some airflow through.
Peter Brock has been to the pits, is back out on the racetrack, in fact just ahead of Dick Johnson. So Johnson will be coming up to put a lap on Peter Brock after his pit stop. Positions unchanged at the front. Grice and Johnson continue their tremendous scrap. Glenn Seaton continues to lead from George Fury with Jimmy Richards in third. We'll update you on the time between those two very shortly as we have reached lap 21 of 50 in the grand final of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car title at Sydney's Oran Park.
Johnson just locks up a brake momentarily going into that corner. Grice all over the rear of the Ford Sierra.
This is the closest he's been, and he's just about, he is in a position to charge down the inside.
Got the good line to the corner, has Grice, and through he goes. Alan Grice picks up one place. Clear air now for Grice.
And an entertaining sight for Dick Johnson.
Yes.
John Bowes just walked into our commentary position and advises that a broken airflow meter was the reason for the demise of car 60, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline.
Yes, the car was running superbly in the opening couple of laps of the race. But for the Nissan followers, the better news is, I guess, that no problems have surfaced at this moment for Glenn Seaton or for George Fury.
And the competition are going to find it a bit tough to mount enough pressure on them to cause them any problems. The way things are going so far, still Seaton and Fury up the front of the race, ahead of Jim Richards, then Grice, and Grice is really throwing everything into it here in the Commodore. Glenn Seaton the leader, George Fury in second spot, Jim Richards holding down third with 28 laps remaining in the race. Alan Grice is fourth, Dick Johnson fifth, and Larry Perkins rounds out the top six in the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. Coming up on half race distance here in the final round of the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship and car 15. The Nissan driven by Glenn Seaton, the series leader, continues to lead the race from teammate George Fury. Third place still being held down by Jim Richards. The gap has widened a fraction though. It's it's coming down to 3.82 seconds. Oh, well, look at that. Weather is about to change here. I think we might be about to get some rain, Mark.
It looks very much that way, according to Frank Van Ries, our chopper pilot, high above Oran Park. There are showers only a couple of minutes away. In fact, a couple of drops already starting to fall at the circuit. That is not good news.
Well, it's good news for Jim Richards because the gap from Seaton back to him was 5.33 seconds. About 4 laps ago, it's now down to 3.8 seconds.
Well, depending how heavy the showers are, they get a downpour, of course. As we understand, you would have the cars pulled to the pit area if the officials would stop the race and restart it. Not at its full length, of course, but if everyone's caught out there in an absolute flood with slick tyres on. But very interesting, though, because we all know that Jim Richards is, in fact, a rain master, and you can see that Richards is gaining now all the time.
Alan Grice has just pulled into the pits, Mike. Sorry to override you there. We saw just a few moments ago the dice between he and Dick Johnson. Grice got past, then Johnson in turn passed him again, and Grice has come into the pits.
There's Alan Grice sitting in the Commodore. We believe in the pit area that BMW team are already running up with wet weather tyres. Grice continues to talk to Les Small and his mechanics, but it would appear that Alan Grice's race is well and truly over. And then you can see, of course, the changing weather in the background. Rear end problem for the Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. They gave it one heck of a shot.
Here's a man giving it a heck of a shot too. Colin Bond came off 12th position on the starting grid here this afternoon and has moved up to 7th position rather. Yep, now in 7th spot. With Grice pulling off. So the Alpha, which has promised so much this season, is delivering for Colin Bond here this afternoon at Oran Park.
Graham Bowkett just back behind him. Then, of course, Tony Longhurst, the next in line.
Greg Hansford joins us on our 7 Motorsport coverage of the grand finale here at Oran Park this afternoon. Sad way to have to go out of a motor race the way you went out lap 1.
It was a bit scary, Gary, from where I was sitting because I wasn't very close to the ground, but I don't know what happened on the first lap. Someone hit me that hard up the back that I think it shortened the car by about 6 inches, but got underway again. It didn't feel very good, so I kept going, but I ended up hitting, I think it was John Crook and Peter Broxell, the Commodore.
Well, this is going to throw a real cat among the pigeons if it starts to bucket down. I don't think it's going to bucket down. I mean, it just might get persistent rain, though, and if they have to change to slicks, the whole complexion of this race could change in a matter of minutes.
Be far better if it did bucket down, because it'd be a lot safer for everyone out there, or then they would just go onto wet weather tyres, and if it rains on half of the circuit or just dampens the circuit, that'll make it more slippery than it could ever be at any other time.
Sitting right in behind Colin Bond, of course, is Tony Longhurst, and as you can see as we take race cam from the flight deck of Glenn Seaton's Peter Jackson Skyline, beads of water on the windscreen. He continues to lead the grand final of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Nationals. 2nd spot held down by George Fury, who's getting ready for a real race on his hands now, and closing on them is the man who needs to win this race to pick up the points and take the title, and that's Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW M3.
Well, the gap first to third is negligible now, but the big thing is the man sandwiched between Seaton and Richards is Seaton's teammate George Fury, and he'll be doing his best to make this track as narrow as possible for Jim Richards.
Of course, the talking point of most conversations in practice this weekend here at Oran Park has been just how well the M3 sits on the road, where on the other hand the Nissans have certainly plenty of grunt, Greg, but are not as tidy.
No, the BMW just they'll do this lap after lap after lap, and you'll find Jim will be able to be as neat and as tidy as he is there now, as well as the last lap. But I'm sure when Jim gets up behind George and George holds him up a little bit, Jim's not going to take any nonsense, I can assure you of that.
No, well, there's plenty at stake here this afternoon, and the way they stand on the track at the moment with 22 laps remaining in the finale of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship. Seaton leads Fury with Richards in third place. Fourth spot on the racetrack held down by Dick Johnson, then Larry Perkins and Andrew Madecki.
Back at Oran Park Raceway, the grand final of the Shell Ultra High Touring Car Nationals continues. 22-year-old Glenn Seaton in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline leads teammate George Fury. Jim Richards runs in third. The positions have not changed, and nor has the wet weather.
Light but persistent rain coming down now, and it's about decision time, I think, for some of these drivers regarding a tyre change. The frantic preparations going on down in the pit area as most of the crews get ready. And look at the way it's closed up. Seaton, Fury, Richards virtually nose to tail now with 19 and a half laps remaining. Look at the cloud, black and threatening overhead at Oran Park. The track already a little greasy, already carrying a lot of rubble, dust, debris, is becoming on the greasy side. Especially over the back there. Seems a little damper over that back side of the course.
The race certainly has everything here today. Glenn Seaton comes down to Castrol Quarter. Here comes Richards and makes the move on the inside of George.
Listen to the crowd. They like it.
They know what's happening. George really caught offline that time, and that was over in a swoop. One swoop as the Rainmaster Richards makes the run at the race leader, Glenn Seaton. Fury gets back on the pace. Comes down here under brakes on Jimmy Richards. But Richards was just too alert.
Breathtaking passing manoeuvre there by Jim Richards. Really, I think, caught George Fury napping.
And that is not doing anything for the confidence of Glenn Seaton. Seaton comes up, putting a lap on Finnegan, and Fury has looped it. Back behind him, he has spun it.
Well, Seaton and Richards, Fury, obviously so annoyed with himself for letting Richards through, rather trying just a little too hard. And on this greasy surface, as we said, light but persistent rain coming down, Fury has spun the number 30 Nissan. And so up front, it's a race in two between the only people that can win the championship, Glenn Seaton and Jim Richards.
Richards is going to put plenty of pressure on Glen Seaton. They come out of Castrol Corner now down the front straight, and here's Richards warming to the pass. Seaton, no George Fury behind him this time, and the Rainmaster, Jim Richards, who will keep applying more pressure as the laps wear down to the checkered flag. In here very tight indeed.
And the M3 is so good under brakes, isn't it, Michael? It seems to have the capacity to go in about a car's length deeper, which is exactly what happened over the back when Jim got past George Fury. Glenn not using his wipers. I wonder if they're working.
And B, I think he probably hasn't even noticed at this stage. They once again head up to the top of Yokohama Bridge.
We've got to make a couple of points here. Seaton went into this race with a 3-point advantage over Jim Richards, but forget that, that doesn't count. Let's just pretend they went into the race even, because whoever finishes in front, and at the moment they're going to finish 1-2 the way it looks, will win the championship. So it's just a question of who's in front at the checkered flag.
Yes, it's fitting that the two guys at the head of the table, the two guys battling out the championship, are now at the head of this race.
Imagine the other dilemma facing either or both of these drivers now, with the question of the weather and a possible change to slick tyres. I mean, Seaton can't afford to opt to come in and change to slicks and let Richards take the lead, because the way the weather is, it could just stop like that.
Well, it does appear to have gone away a little bit, the rain. It seems to be that it's drying out again. And I'm sure that would suit young Glenn.
The battle for the Touring Car Championship. The face of Fred Gibson, Nissan team manager, says it all as Jimmy Richards, the Rainmaster, hones in on series leader and grand final race leader Glen Seaton. Out of the right-hander, up over the top of Yokohama Bridge. And Richards applying all the pressure here on the inside. Seaton trying to cover his track stay on the dry area of road through that section. More rain has fallen over this part of the racetrack as they head up to Honda Corner. They expect Richards to make a move if he can get right on the tail of the Nissan as they drop down into the left-hander at Castrol. Here he comes. And here comes Richards. Yes, no. And Seaton, has he spun it? No, he catches it again. Richards down on the inside. Door handle to door handle this time. Down the start-finishing line. We take race cam. He's there. He looks over his shoulder. Now into the mirror.
Did you see the blue flag there, as if they didn't know they were close?
And here he comes. A reprieve for Glen Seaton. Jim Richards throwing everything at this 22-year-old.
That's a remarkable driving performance by Seaton to catch the car, hold it there and hold Richards out under so much pressure.
Frank Gardner says, well, maybe next time. And there's still quite a few laps left in this one. Seaton acquitted himself well, and that their first real encounter in this race.
Team manager Fred Gibson was telling me this morning that he's so proud of his drivers. He says those cars, those Nissans, shouldn't be so quick. They're an engine with it looking for a body, really, because they're not his words, they were my words. The car doesn't have the aerodynamic assistance that the M3 has. The M3 is a motor car that is designed to race. The Skyline is a compromise.
Will they stay on slicks? Should they change to wet weather tyres? Nobody has opted to make that move as yet. The weather looks to be holding off. Just a little light rain still falling, but it won't bucket down. It won't make up its mind. The leading car, Glen Seaton, is coming up on Ludwig Finauer, who's in 10th position on the track. So the leaders are about to lap the number 10th car, the number 10th placed car.
Richards down on the inside and spins Seaton, pushes him out of the way. Dearie me, that was not what everyone really expected of Jim as Glen tries to get it back under control again.
Don't think Richards had much choice though, because Seaton was losing it through the corner and he turned himself sideways onto Richards, and Richards really had nowhere else to go.
The short straight now for the approach to Yokohama. Jimmy Richards. Let's have a look. It's waltzing around under brakes, but he turns into the corner. Bang.
Oh.
This could well go to the CAMS Tribunal, the Touring Car Championship.
What do you reckon, Peter?
Oh, yeah.
50-50. Depends which team you were backing for.
Nicely put, Michael.
Yeah, I like, 50-50, I guess.
Yeah. 50% of the fans would say an even thing. If you're a BMW supporter, there was nothing wrong with it. If you're a Nissan supporter, it was blatant barging. Jimmy Richards takes over the lead in the Touring Car Championship Grand Final for JPS BMW M3.
15 laps remaining in the race, and Richards is in front. Seaton second, and the rest are nowhere.
Have a look at this as Seaton goes into the corner. The Shell Ultra replay pulls in his hit there, goes skating out towards the wall, trying to catch it with brakes on, looks over his shoulder. And by the time that all happens, you'll see the tail of the black BMW. It's gone through. That's how it happened. Second view there from our 7 race cam. And there's the gap. Jimmy Richards to Glenn Seaton. Seaton now probably picking up the pieces of what's happened, cooling himself down and getting back on with the job of trying to haul in Richards once again. Sun tried to creep through here at Oran Park Raceway.
But light rain still falling despite that, and it's becoming very difficult out there on the circuit now.
Jimmy Richards heads up to the top of Honda, now drops down as we pick up the placings. Richards the race leader, Seaton in second, teammate George Fury is third, fourth place held by Dick Johnson, fifth by Tony Longhurst, sixth by Larry Perkins, and we'll be back in a moment. Back at Oran Park Raceway for the grand final of the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship, and disaster for Glenn Seaton after that encounter with Jim Richards. Smoke billowing out of the car as just this moment headed behind the pit wall. Neil Crompton is trackside. And obviously can't hear me at this very moment, but we'll go back to Neil and speak with Fred Gibson in just a moment. Just let's recap for you the positions on the racetrack. Race leader is Jimmy Richards for JPS BMW. Holding down second spot is, of course, George Fury in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. And closing up on Fury in the last couple of laps has been Dick Johnson in car number 17. Tony Longhurst making a bolt back through the field in company with Larry Perkins. They're the positions at the moment. as you can see, the gap between George Fury and Dick Johnson.
Well, my gee, didn't it fall apart there for Glenn Seaton in an awful hurry. Leading the race as he was from teammate George Fury. Then we saw a brilliant bit of driving from Jim Richards to get underneath Fury and park himself right on Seaton's bumper. Then this light rain started to fall. The track has become very slippery. We saw Glenn Seaton almost lose it once on the turn coming into the top of the main straight, recover and continue to lead Richards, and then a couple of laps later going out the bottom end of the main straight, Seaton having just a little difficulty controlling the car. Half a gap opened on the inside. Richards went to go through. Seaton caught the car, got back online, and unfortunately Richards at that stage had committed himself to the corner and crunched the car. And while Seaton was still trying to bring it under control, Richards was through for the lead. That has done some damage to the car, and unfortunately Seaton is off the track. Neil Crompton has more.
Indeed I do, Gary Wilkinson. Game, set and match for the 1987 Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship. Fred Gibson, have you had any contact with Glenn? What was the problem?
I think he's done a turbo, Neil. It sounds like a turbo. It's pumping smoke. It's showing all the signs of a turbo. Don't know why. We've never had a failure all year, and this is the first time we've had the failure. So the thing is, we've not run any more boosts. We've been running all year. So it might have been something gone wrong somewhere else. I don't know.
Very, very disappointing, quite obviously.
Oh, yes, disappointed, but that's the way motor racing goes, isn't it? As I said before the race, we give it our best shot. I think Glenn drove his bum out up there. He's an experienced driver, Jimmy. Put a lot of pressure on him. He had a couple of half lose and he come back at him. So I think in all, he's not disgraced today by what he did.
Race is not over. George Fury with a chance of perhaps taking out round 9 at least.
Well, I'm going to give him a bit of the hurry up now and see when he do that for us.
Okay, thanks Freddie, and very bad luck for the Nissan team, but we'll look forward to having you back in 1988. Peter Jackson, Nissan team, a little down on luck. Let's hope they come back next year bigger and better than ever.
Thank you, Neil Crompton. Peter Brock continues in 05. The Mobile Commodore V8 has already had a pit stop. Is out there and running, still well down the list.
10th spot, yep.
10th, which isn't too bad considering he's been to the pits and then back out on the racetrack again. So it hasn't been the best of years for Peter Brock, and it would seem reasonable to assume that a Commodore is not going to win a round of the Australian Touring Car Championship for 1987. That's certainly a first, so used to seeing them capture at least one round in the last couple of years. Certainly Peter Brock last year at Surfers Paradise, but he'll be stronger in 88. Positions at the moment, Jim Richards leads, George Fury is second, Dick Johnson runs in third, fourth spot held down by Larry Perkins, fifth is Tony Longhurst, and in sixth place, car 14, Murray Carter.
Oran Park, venue for the Shell Ultra Touring Car Championship decider. Laps are running out, just 6.5 remaining here. And Jim Richards continues to lead from George Fury and Dick Johnson. This is the battle for fourth between Larry Perkins and Tony Longhurst.
Tony Longhurst, of course, shared the front row with Jim Richards. Dropped out, I think, as far back as 12th spot, and has been managing to come back through the pack. In fact, losing a bit of ground there to Larry Perkins. Perkins has really got quite a burst on. Tony had hoped to follow his teammate right through today's race, post second, but the Peter Jackson Nissan team changed all of that, with George Fury setting up an early lead. Of course, the series leader, Glenn Seaton, then taking George Fury the whole lap. What seemed like he was well on his way, that wasn't to be. And joining us in the commentary box for the run to the checkered flag is in fact Glenn Seaton. Well, that was a tough break, young man.
That's right. That's motor racing. You've got to take the good with the bad, and I can't really complain about this year because I've sort of had a fairly good year. I just hope George can get up there and fly the flag for the Peter Jackson Nissan.
I guess someone will ask you 100 times today what did it feel like when the thing stopped.
Well, there's lots of things go through your mind at the time, but like I said, you got to take the good with the bad, and I think if you can take it with and think of the good all the time, you've always got a long way to go.
You've had a fantastic season, there's no doubt about that. I would think there were two incidents in the race. Obviously, the first one was down here in Castrol, when, of course, you got a touch and skated out, but were able to get back on even pegging with Jim. Was that a pretty tough bang in the side?
Well, the biggest bang was at the end of the straight. We had a fair bit of a touch, but I sort of locked up. I tried to sort of hold my line through here, but it sort of didn't work out properly. But these sort of things can happen. But before, we were locking up back brakes fairly bad coming into the end corner, but I thought we were on the pace and going well, but those things change over a couple of seconds.
Conditions must have been getting a bit difficult with that persistent light rain falling as well.
That's right, it was getting fairly greasy out there and very slippery on some parts of the circuit. You sort of got to come up to the corners and think, oh, halfway around the circuit was raining, halfway it was dry, and it's hard to pick which parts of the circuit which were dry and which were wet.
Tony Longhurst, we mentioned, Glenn, disappeared back through the field in the opening lap of the race, back to 12th spot, and he's been able to come back through now, still challenging Larry Perkins, of course. They're having that great scrap for 4th and 5th, coming up behind Williams here, and he switches back on the inside. You've driven the Nissan lightweight round here all day. How'd you like the job of doing 50 of the best in a Commodore?
Yeah, it'll be fairly hard work, I think. Our tyres are fairly good, but I reckon the Commodore tyres by now will be starting to get fairly second-hand.
Larry seems to be able to do the best pruning job on tyres of all the Commodore drivers, and has done it throughout the Touring Car Championship Series and the NZ Connectors Holden V8. His great scrap continues. And I guess the next question people will ask you, well, there went the touring car title, I guess there's always Bathurst.
That's right. Sort of Bathurst is equally as everyone wants to win as the Touring Car Championship, and hopefully we can do well up there. I think we can.
We've certainly got a great and professional team. It was very interesting to watch John Bow in the early stages of the race. He was playing the best rear gunner of all time coming through the pack. As it's turned out, George is still left there to contend with the traffic, and at this stage Jimmy Richards leads the pack down to the final stages. Who knows? Who really knows? He might even crack it for a smile yet, Frank Gardner. I just love to see him smile in Bernie's beach hat.
Yes, I think Frank deserves just as equally as we do as the championship this year. He's put a lot of hard work into it and prepared 3 very good BMWs, I think.
He certainly has, and so too is Freddie Gibson. Winding down with this very exciting tussle for 4th and 5th.
I just wish Glenn would say something nasty.
No, Glenn won't say anything nasty. And a beautiful shot from our 7 chopper high above Oran Park Raceway. An absolute capacity crowd on hand for today's final, a fitting final to the Shell Ultra Touring Car Nationals for 1987, with Jimmy Richards out in front in car number 3, the JPS BMW. And I guess the only bit of good news that Ron Meacham has had all year. There's Jim. He continues down the front straight with 2 laps remaining.
Really just a case now for Richards to be very gentle on the car. You can see there's quite a distinguished dry line on the road. The rain just seems to have eased off a little bit when I just came inside. Had really the strangest conditions this afternoon. Still reasonably warmish, funnily enough. But just sprinklings of rain occasionally. Or Finnegan getting terribly out of shape in the VL Commodore.
See what, George isn't all that far behind in the number 30 Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. But of course the earlier confrontation with Glenn upset the apple cart, so to speak. There's George going through now. And he accelerates out of there. Dick Johnson still running in 3rd place in the Shell Cosworth Sierra. 4th place Larry Perkins. 5th place being held down, of course, by car number 4. Car number 11 Larry Perkins. Then Tony Longhurst. Murray Carter is the next one. He's had a good run. Graham Bowkett. And in 8th spot is Peter Brock. Coming up to take the signal for the last lap as he goes across the strike. The man who won 7 out of 10 touring car rounds in 1985 wore the mantle as touring car champion. Last year, of course, it was George Fury who chased Robbie Francevic all season. Francevic took the crown, put it in a case, went back to New Zealand and hasn't been sighted on the Australian mainland all season. We're likely to see him lining up the co-driver's role in one of these M3s a little later on for the endurance races. Is George still gaining? George could have done with another 5 laps, couldn't he?
That's right. Only if we had another 5 laps, we may be able to have a victory today, but there's only 1 lap to go and miracles will have to happen from here.
I wouldn't be counting on one. And I don't think that would really even be fair to Jimmy Richards, who's driven a great race. Working his way up to Honda Corner for the final time. This overflow crowd at Oran Park Raceway at Narellan, ready to rise in Castrol Corner as the 85 national champ comes downhill for the final time. Cheers have already started. The final corner comes up. The checkered flag is at the ready. And the man who takes the Touring Car National wins the championship. Jim Richards for JPS BMW. Peter Jackson Nissan's George Fury closing on him like lightning at the finish. And 3rd place will go to Queensland's Dick Johnson. Fantastic effort to Jimmy Richards and the JPS BMW team. They've taken the 1987 Touring Car National title. Recapping the placings for you now on the Castrol scoreboard. Jim Richards, race winner and Australian champion. George Fury takes 2nd. Dick Johnson finishes 3rd. 4th place today, Larry Perkins. 5th, Tony Longhurst. And 6th place, Victoria's battling Murray Carter.
Well, if we'd have scripted it, you could not have got a better finale to the Shell Ultra Australian Touring Car Championship here at Oran Park this afternoon. And let's do things in the reverse order if we can and say congratulations, first of all, to the man who finished 3rd in this afternoon's 9th and final round of the championship after a season of a lot of ill luck with turbos and other problems, but getting it all together at the right time of the season, Dick Johnson. Thanks. Congratulations, mate. Well done.
Thanks,
and the presentation to be made by Mr. John Rowe, the Retail Marketing Manager of Shell Australia.
Dick, congratulations on behalf of Shell Ultra. Well done.
Thanks very much, John.
There's your trophy.
Thank you.
And something to have a drink with.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much to Shell and to also Motorcraft, who have stood by us all this time, and Palmer Tube Mills, who have been with us for many, many years. Commiserations to Glenn. He put up a tremendous fight, and certainly congratulations to Jim. I reckon he's done a great job all year. Thanks very much.
Well, Nissan came here looking for a big day, and misfortune befell Glenn Seaton, but George Fury, Farmer George, hung in there to the end and finished up with a 2nd place in today's final round.
George, from Shell Ultra, congratulations. I love that handbrake turn, mate. It was a super one, and it was a very quick one, and that's what got you back to 2nd, I think. Well done. It's been a great season. 2nd place. All the best. And something to drink.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say what a fantastic touring car championship it was, and how glad I am to have been part of it, even though I'm a bit sorry for Glenn for going out the way he did, and it would have been better for Jim and Glenn to have a fair fight to the end. But all the same, congratulations to Jim and BMW for having won, and thanks very much for Peter Jackson-Nissan for supplying me with a car, and a competitive car at that, and thank you all for coming.
And just before we get to the champion himself, I think it'd be pretty cruel of us if we didn't give a big hand to this young bloke, Glenn Seaton. Glenn, you obviously wanted it so bad you could almost taste it, and I guess you almost had it in your hand out there this afternoon. It just wasn't to be this time round.
Well, that's right. I think you got to take the good with the bad with motorsport, and I think Jimmy was better on the day, so he really deserves the championship this year, I think. And thank you to George this year, who's backed me up all the way. He's done a fantastic job, and I'd like to thank him so much.
Glenn Seaton, he mightn't be the champion today, but he will be in the near future. You can bet your life. For now, congratulations from John Large, the President of the Confederation of Australian Motorsport, Jim Richards.
I'd firstly like to thank Shell for putting on the series, because without them obviously it would make the job a lot tougher for the boys and the people who get the cars ready. But commiserations to Glenn. The only sorry thing I've got about this championship is that I ran into him, which I didn't mean to do, but fortunately he didn't finish because of that. It was a turbo, I think, but I'm very happy to win again. I'd like to thank BMW, of course, and JPS for allowing me to drive such a great little car. I'd like to thank Frank especially for giving me such a good car to drive, and all the boys, my Greg that looks after my car, Goofy, the other Greg, and all the lads for doing such a great job through the season. Thank you very much.
Jim, from Shell Ultra, this small trophy with our congratulations. Great race, great season, and congratulations on the championship as well. Can you hold that?
Thank you very much.
You also have a trophy for under 2.5 litre winner today, not the first time. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Again. And something to drink.
Thank you.
I'll hold this for you.